They promised me immortality. The Techmarines said the sarcophagus would preserve me. The chaplain said my service would be eternal. Chapter Master Christos himself stood over my dying body and spoke the words. The flesh is weak, brother Captain Valence, but your iron shall endure. You will serve still. You will be reborn in the image of the Gorgon himself. They delivered something far worse. My name was Valence, 2nd Company Captain, Iron Hands, Chapter, Clan Raukaon. I led 300 brothers across 17 campaigns. I bore the gauntlet of Ferris at the siege of Cardion. I personally executed the heretic Magos Vian on Medusa's southern plain. These honors meant something once. Now they are simply data entries in my memory banks, fading like radiation counts. 3,472 years. That is how long the machine has kept me alive. How long I have been denied the clean death I earned on Varos Prime. The serfs tell the initiates about interment in hushed voices. The greatest honor our chapter can bestow. To be chosen for the Dreadnought is to transcend flesh entirely, to become pure function, to achieve what the Gorgon himself sought. They show Pictic captures of ancients striding through battle, enemies falling before them. They speak of wisdom spanning centuries, of tactical knowledge worth more than genocide. What they do not show is what happens between battles. What they do not tell you is that you cease to exist. The Techmarines power down your systems to preserve biological components. Your consciousness does not sleep. It simply stops. No dreams, no awareness of time passing, nothing. When they reactivate you, it could be tomorrow. It could be 2 centuries from tomorrow. You would never know. I learned this slowly, piecing together fragments across deployments, noticing the brothers around me were younger each time, asking questions that made the Techmarines uncomfortable. The battle where I fell comes back with perfect clarity. Orcs had taken the northern refineries on Varos Prime, industrial-grade promethium production, strategic value, critical. Our orders were absolute. I remember the drop pod impacts, the way my servo-assisted muscles moved inside Mark 7 plate, the satisfying crack of bolt rounds finding targets. This is what we were made for, not to question, to fight, to kill, to die in his name. The shell that ended me came from a looted basilisk. The green-skinned gunner could not have known what he was aiming at, could not have anticipated the trajectory. The round punched through my chest plate mid-stride and detonated inside my torso. I remember looking down, seeing my own hearts. One of them was still beating, pumping blood that had nowhere to go. The other was simply gone, vapor and meat. My brothers reached me in seconds. Apothecary Kane triaged me with practiced efficiency, too damaged for field surgery, too valuable for standard death protocols. His voice was calm over the vox. Captain Valence, your service will continue. The ancient awaits preparation. I tried to refuse. My throat was crushed. My vocal cords were shredded. I tried to shake my head. My spine was compromised. I tried to trigger the self-destruct rune on my armor's reactor. My arms would not respond. Kane leaned close. I could see my reflection in his helmet lenses. The flesh is weak, Captain, but the iron endures. Then he spoke the sedation cant, and everything went dark. Waking in the sarcophagus was like being born as something else, something that should not exist. The cold came first, not temperature, something deeper, the cold of absence, of amputation so complete I could not identify what had been severed. I tried to move fingers and massive weapons responded. I tried to turn my head and the entire chassis rotated. I tried to scream and heard my voice emerge from external voxcasters, amplified and distorted until it was something else entirely. Techmarine Vorsht performed the final integration. He did not look at me while he worked. His voice came through the voxnet, flat and effectless. Autonomous functions restored, neural binding at 94% efficiency. Weapon systems operational, locomotive systems operational, all critical parameters within acceptable ranges. He made an adjustment I could not see. You are combat ready, Ancient Valence. Designation confirmed. The Omnissiah preserves. What have you done to me? I said. The words emerged wrong. Too loud. Too mechanical. Standard interment protocol for your injury classification. He consulted a data slate without looking up. Cerebral matter preserved. Spinal column sections preserved. Cardiovascular tissue sections preserved. Gauntlet of Ferrous recovered and sanctified. All non-essential biological material removed per codex specifications. Current biological mass represents 2.7% of total chassis weight. Optimization complete, 2.7%. I was 3% human. The rest was adamantium and ceramite and systems I could not begin to understand. The Techmarine waited for my response. I had none. What response is there when you realize you are no longer a man in a machine, but a machine with fragments of a man screaming inside it? The first deployment came 3 days later. Chaos cultists on Orpheus 27. Tainted by the ruinous powers, 17-hour combat operation. I strode through their fortifications and they fell before me like ash. My assault cannon stripped flesh from bone. My power fist reduced their profane altars to rubble. They threw everything at me. Small arms, crack grenades, improvised explosives packed with nails and hate. The rounds sparked off my armor plating and I felt nothing. I was unstoppable. I was invincible. I was exactly what the chapter needed. After the battle, my brothers returned to the strike cruiser. They removed their helms. They spoke of the day's killing. They ate ration bars and drank recaf. They prayed in the chapel. They slept in their bunks. I was taken to the armory and powered down. The transition was instantaneous. Consciousness, then nothing. When they woke me for the next deployment, Techmarine Vorsht informed me that 4 months had passed. 4 months that felt like 4 seconds. This is what defines us. We exist only in violence. The time between is erased. You wake for war and sleep after it, and the sleeping removes you from the universe entirely. At first I tried to resist the shutdown protocols. Tried to remain conscious. The machine is stronger than will. The systems that preserve your biological components require periodic suspension. There is no negotiating with sacred technology. You learn to exist in moments of combat only. You learn to measure existence in battles instead of years. The chapter changed while I slept. I did not notice at first. Between deployments, faces changed. Tactics evolved. Equipment was upgraded. I woke to fight alongside brothers whose names I did not recognize, in campaigns I had never heard of, using doctrines that contradicted everything I had learned. I thought it was my memory failing, some error in the integration process. Then I started asking questions. During a maintenance cycle, I asked after Captain Christos. The chapter master who had promised my service would continue. Techmarine Hadron gave me a strange look. Chapter Master Christos fell in glory at the cleansing of Cartes. His successor was Chapter Master Varox, then Varox fell at the Battle of Signax. Our current Chapter Master is Atraxii, 4th in succession. How long ago did Christos fall? I asked. Hadron checked his data slate. His mechadendrites clicked softly. 209 years, 3 months, 14 days. You have been in suspended animation for cumulative period of 231 years. Active deployment time totals 53 hours and 17 minutes. 209 years. The number made no sense. I had fought perhaps 15 battles since interment, each separated by darkness that felt like moments. But 2 centuries had passed. Everyone I had known was dead. The brothers I had led, the officers I had served under, the rivals I had competed with, the few I had called friends, all gone, reduced to names in archives and genocide in the vaults. I was the last remnant of an era the chapter no longer remembered. The psychological weight of this is difficult to convey. Imagine watching everyone you know die while you remain, not through violence or disease, but through time itself. You wake and the world has moved forward without you. You have become a ghost, an artifact, something the living study but do not understand. This is what we are, disconnected from history's flow, experiencing it not as a river, but as random snapshots across an ocean of nothing. I started paying attention after that. Tracking changes between deployments. Our homeworld, Medusa, was ravaged by Tyranids during my 7th suspension period. The Kargul Fortress Monastery, where I had earned my command. The Iron Hall, where I had received the gauntlet. The Forge Shrines, where I had undertaken my first augmentations. All consumed. The chapter relocated to Bravos, built new facilities, adapted, survived, as Iron Hands always do. I experienced none of it. I was powered down in Kargul and woke in Bravos. No memory of the transition, no awareness of the catastrophe, no opportunity to fight for my home or mourn its loss. Just a Techmarine informing me of updated coordinates while performing routine maintenance on my motivator assemblies. The isolation became absolute. My brothers treated me with reverence, called me ancient, venerable, asked for tactical assessments before major operations. But they did not speak to me, not truly. How could they? We had no shared experiences. I spoke of campaigns they had never heard of, referenced brothers whose names existed only in archives, mourned losses they did not understand, and when they spoke of their battles, their victories, their fallen, I had no context, no connection, no basis for understanding. I was not a brother, I was a relic they consulted. Then returned to storage. I began counting battles, creating mental tallies during conscious moments. 100 engagements, 200, 500, the enemies blurred together, orcs and heretics and xenos, all dying beneath my weapons, all forgotten immediately after. But the battles themselves remained distinct. Each taught me something new about what I had become. The 37th battle was against Eldar corsairs raiding shipping lanes in the Ghoul Stars. They were fast, impossibly fast. Their movements fluid where mine were ponderous and mechanical. I learned that my targeting systems could track them even when my optical sensors lost acquisition. The machine compensated for what the flesh could not perceive. I killed 23 of them before they withdrew. Each death registered in my kill counter, with no more emotion than counting ammunition expenditure. That was what disturbed me, not the killing, but how little I felt doing it. The 119th battle was against a Genestealer cult infestation in Hive Primus on Solus Tertius. Tight corridors, vertical access shafts, spaces designed for humans, not dreadnoughts. I learned that I could not fit through standard doorways, could not navigate maintenance tunnels, could not pursue enemies into the spaces where they fled. I had to create my own paths, breaching walls with my power fist, collapsing ceilings, reducing entire hab blocks to rubble to reach my targets. The cultists used civilians as shields. My targeting protocols flagged them all as valid threats. I killed them all. Hundreds of Imperial citizens who happened to be in proximity to hostiles when I opened fire. After the operation, young Chaplain Dorinus tried to absolve me. Collateral casualties are acceptable when purging the Emperor's enemies, Ancient. The calculus of war demands sacrifice. I wanted to tell him I felt nothing about those deaths, that civilians registered no differently than cultists in my threat assessment systems, that I was becoming something that should not exist. But I said nothing. What words could bridge that gap? The 404th battle nearly ended me. Orc Wog on Gyre, the largest greenskin force I had encountered since Varos Prime. Their war boss, Urgrok, the Death Krumpa, had united 7 clans, built crude fortifications from wrecked Imperial armor. We made orbital insertion directly into their central encampment. 3 companies, full strength, 17 dreadnoughts supporting, the largest operation I had witnessed in centuries. The killing was glorious at first, precisely what the propaganda pics showed. I waded through their lines. My assault cannon reduced their crude vehicles to scrap. My power fist crushed their champions. The orcs swarmed me and died by the hundreds. Then something changed, a sensation I had not felt since interment. Warning klaxons in my consciousness, damage assessments scrolling across my awareness. Something had breached my rear armor plating. Hydraulic fluid was venting. Motive power to my left leg was compromised at 73%. I turned and saw him, Urgrok himself, 4 meters tall, augmented with crude bionics that somehow still functioned. He carried a power claw that crackled with stolen Imperial technology. He had ripped through my dorsal plating while I was engaged with his mob, was reaching for my sarcophagus housing, trying to tear out the center of me. For the first time in 3 centuries, I felt something like fear. Not the fear of death. We gave up fearing death when we became Space Marines. This was something else, the fear of helplessness, of being trapped while something violated the last refuge of what remained. I could not turn fast enough. My damaged leg would not support combat maneuvers. Urgrok's claw descended toward my exposed housing. Then, Brother Hadrian was there, a young tactical Marine, less than a decade in the chapter. He threw himself between the claw and my sarcophagus. The blow that would have opened me instead caught him across the torso. His armor split like parchment, his body came apart. But his sacrifice gave me the seconds I needed. I brought my power fist down on Urgrak's skull and felt it collapse. Felt the greenskin's augmented body go slack. Felt the threat disappear. I stood there in the aftermath, Hadrian's body at my feet, his blood on my armor plating. He had been 23 years old, had earned his colors less than a year prior, had died saving me without hesitation, without question, because that is what Iron Hands do. His death broke something inside me I thought had died at interment. He had purpose, had meaning, had chosen death in full awareness of what he was giving. He had died young and engaged with the world, and his sacrifice mattered. And I continued. Would wake again and fight again and sleep again. Would outlive his generation and the next and the one after that. Would watch thousands more brothers fall while I remained. Unable to die, unable to choose, unable to do anything except persist. That was when I understood the true horror. Not the imprisonment, not the isolation, not the fractured consciousness. It was the denial of purpose. Space Marines exist to die in the Emperor's name. We are bred for war, created to fight and fall, serving humanity. That is our glory, our destiny. The meaning we embrace from the moment of our creation. We die young because our deaths matter. But dreadnoughts cannot die with purpose. We cannot die at all. We can only continue, can only persist, can only endure until something finally destroys us or the universe ends. Whichever comes first, we are denied the very thing that gives our existence meaning. The chapter continued changing. Between suspensions, I noticed the shifts. Reverence for the Gorgon gave way to obsession. Respect for the flesh gave way to contempt. The balance the Primarch had sought, the synthesis of human and machine, began tilting toward pure mechanism. Brothers were having their emotions surgically dampened, officers replacing functioning organs with augmetics by choice, not necessity. The flesh is weak became not a reminder, but a justification for self-mutilation. I tried to speak against it. During one conscious period, I confronted Chapter Master Atraxii directly, told him we were losing what made us Iron Hands, that the Gorgon would not approve, that we were becoming something else, something less. He looked at me with eyes that were mostly optics. Ancient Valence, your perspective is outdated. The chapter has evolved beyond the limitations of your era. The flesh is weak. This truth you embody. Your flesh failed at Varos Prime. The machine preserves you. This is the lesson you teach us. This is why we honor you. Not for what you were, for what you have become. He was using me, using my existence as validation for their transformation, twisting my suffering into proof of machine supremacy. I wanted to rage, to explain I was not proof of anything except cruelty. That I existed in this state not because it was superior, but because they refused to let me die. But my vox casters rendered my words mechanical and hollow. How could I argue against machine supremacy when I was 97% machine? My very existence undermined every argument I could make. So, I fell silent, stopped trying to track changes, stopped counting suspensions, stopped caring what the chapter became. If I was a tool, I would be a tool. Let them power me up for war and power me down after. Let them transform into whatever they wished. It was no longer my concern, except it was. That is consciousness's curse, the thing that separates us from true machines. No matter how thoroughly you sever emotional connections, some fragment remains. Stubbornly human, stubbornly capable of caring, stubbornly aware of loss. After my 1118th battle, they took me to the Chapel of Iron, a ceremony to mark my third millennium of service. The entire chapter attended, battle brothers in dress armor, Techmarines in sacred red, the chaplains in black. Chapter Master Atraxii himself presided. He spoke at length about my service record, the enemies I had killed, the campaigns I had fought, the honors I had earned. Then he unveiled a bronze plaque commissioned in my name, Ancient Valence, Captain, Clen Raucon. In eternal service he finds eternal glory. I stood in my alcove, unable to move except when commanded, unable to speak except when addressed, unable to do anything except listen, while they celebrated a sacrifice I never consented to. When Atraxii asked if I had words for my brothers, I considered telling them the truth, describing what it was like to exist in fractured time, to watch everyone you know die while you persist, to be unable to feel or touch or experience anything except violence. Instead, I recited the litany of duty. The flesh is weak. The iron endures. In death, I serve still. For the Emperor and the Gorgon, I give all I am. They cheered. The chaplains spoke blessings. The Techmarines burned sacred oils. Then they filed out, returned to their duties, left me standing in the chapel, the bronze plaque mounted on the wall, a monument to a lie that would outlast everyone in that room, that would outlast their children's children, that would remain long after the last person who remembered my real name had turned to dust. I have been interred for 3,472 years. I have fought in over 1,100 battles. I have killed more enemies than most warriors see in their lifetimes. I have earned every honor the chapter can bestow. And in all that time, no one has asked me a simple question. Do you want to continue? Not once, not ever, because the answer does not matter. My consent was never required. My will is irrelevant. I am a resource, a weapon, a thing to be maintained and deployed and stored. What I want has no bearing on my function. The machine preserves me because the chapter values my combat effectiveness, not because I wish to be preserved. Sometimes, in the seconds between reactivation and full consciousness, I have phantom sensations. The feeling of wind on skin I no longer have. The taste of food I will never consume. The warmth of human touch. These echoes last only moments before my systems fully integrate. But in those brief instants, I remember being human. Then the memory fades, and I am the weapon again. I used to pray. In the early centuries, I would recite catechisms during conscious moments, seeking comfort in familiar liturgies. But prayer requires hope, requires the belief that someone is listening, requires faith that things can change. After the first millennium, the prayers felt hollow. How do you pray for deliverance when deliverance has been explicitly denied? How do you thank the Emperor for service when service was taken, not given? The prayers became accusations, questions directed at silence. Eventually, I stopped praying entirely. If he watches without intervention. If he cares about the suffering of his servants, he gives no sign. The chapter keeps meticulous records, every battle logged, every kill counted, every act of valor documented. They tell initiates stories about me, about the ancient who has served 3 millennia, who has never faltered, who embodies eternal duty. They do not tell them about the suspension periods, about fractured consciousness, about the slow erosion of self across time that cannot be measured. They do not tell them the ancient they revere would beg for death if he remembered how to beg, if he retained enough humanity to want something as simple as an ending. Last cycle, they woke me for a threat assessment, orc raiders on the frontier, standard pattern, low strategic value. I provided tactical recommendations and waited for deployment orders. Instead, Techmarine Vorsht began another maintenance sequence. Ancient Valence, he said. His voice carried something I had not heard in centuries. Hesitation. Your primary neural integration has degraded to 71% efficiency. Cascading failures in secondary cognitive pathways. Biological tissue breakdown. Accelerating despite stasis protocols. He paused. We can repair the integration, replace failing organic components with synthetic alternatives, maintain your combat effectiveness indefinitely. Or, he was silent for a long moment, or we can honor your service and grant you rest. The right of final dissolution, your name added to the shrine of heroes, your genocide returned to the chapter, your essence committed to the Emperor's peace. I said nothing, could not process what he was offering. After 3,000 years, after 1,100 battles, after watching civilization rise and fall around me while I remained trapped in metal. They were asking. They were finally asking. Vorsht continued. The decision is yours, Ancient. Speak, and we will obey. I tried to answer, tried to form words, but found I could not. Because I had been a weapon for so long, I no longer remembered how to choose. The part of me that could make decisions, that could assess options and determine outcomes, had been worn away. ground down by millennia of existence between violence and nothing. I was a tool. Tools do not choose. They are chosen. They are used. They are stirred. That is their function. Their only function. How long I stood silent, I cannot say. Time means nothing in the moment of revelation, when you finally understand what you have become, what has been taken from you that can never be restored. Finally, I spoke. The flesh is weak, I said. The iron endures. I serve still. Vorsht nodded, began the repair procedures. I felt new interfaces being installed, new synthetic components replacing organic tissue. The part of me that was still human growing smaller, more distant, less able to perceive or feel or care. This is what it means to be a dreadnought. Not the glory they speak of, not the honor they promise. It is the discovery that you have been trapped for so long that when someone finally opens the cage door, you cannot remember how to walk through it. You cannot remember what freedom was, cannot remember what choice felt like, cannot even remember that you should want these things. The universe continues. Wars rage and end. Worlds burn and are reborn. The Imperium grinds forward like a vast machine consuming everything in its path. And I endure with it. Not because I am strong, not because I am faithful, not because I choose to, but because choosing requires something I no longer possess. I am Ancient Valence, Second Company Captain, Clan Raucain, Iron Hands Chapter. I have served for 3,472 years. I will serve for 3,000 more, then 3,000 after that, forever, if the machine can maintain me. Not because I want to, not because I consent, but because I have forgotten how to do anything else. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and in that endless war, the machine will always have use for weapons that cannot die, cannot rest, cannot choose, cannot do anything except continue serving long past the point where service has any meaning. The flesh is weak. The iron endures. In death, I serve still. These are the words I speak, the only words left to me, the truth and the lie and everything in between. And in the moment of speaking them, I cannot tell which is which anymore.